Hi everybody, and thank you for joining me again on another episode of Gaffer & Gear. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the TEMO-Link CRMX receivers and transmitters. All right, so what's the advantage of these things? Well, they are insanely cheap for a CRMX receiver or transmitter. They sell for typically under $200 US and around the 300 Australian dollar price point. Now, they are advertised as TEMO-Link, but they are not TEMO2 receivers or transmitters. They are most likely just TEMO-FX. Now, I've come to that conclusion because neither one will talk to the phone app. Now, the only sort of negative to that is you might have been hoping if they were TEMO2 receivers and transmitters that you could just buy the transmitter and then turn it into a receiver via the phone app if you didn't want to use it as a transmitter, but that's not the case. Now, in terms of other negatives, they don't have a weather protection rating, but then again, I don't know of any other plug-in receiver that does. And the only other sort of negative with this one is it's connected directly to the receiver here, or the top. So if you do plug it into your light, you can rotate it side to side like this, but you can't position it against the body of the light. So if you've got a light, for example, that has a stirrup, this might hit the stirrup. Now, an easy sort of workaround for that is you could just buy a DMX patch cable. These are really, really cheap, and connect this between the receiver and the light. Okay, let's have a look at the receiver first. Okay, so let's talk about powering this off a battery. So maybe you've got a light that doesn't have a USB port on it that you can power the receiver off. So what I have found is with high capacity batteries like this one, so this is 310 watt hour, quite often this can be problematic. So with these batteries, first thing you need to know about is sometimes you have to press the power indicator button on the side here to turn on the USB out. Now, when I do that, you can see the power light comes on momentarily, but then it shuts down. So these high capacity batteries, for some reason, I think they can't detect the current draw coming off these because it's so insignificant compared to the capacity of the battery. So either they run it only for a few seconds, or the other scenario is they will run a receiver like this for about 5 to 10 minutes and then turn off. So that's something to be wary of, so just be aware of that. Now, if you're using a smaller V-mount battery that's designed more for camera department, my findings are with these is they will have absolutely no problem powering a device like this. And if you forget that you're running your receiver off batteries, you don't need to worry because it will run it for several days. Now, what I more commonly use as a battery solution is these little batteries that I bought off eBay. So they're a USB battery. Now, something like this will run the receiver for about 3/4 of a day. So what I do is at lunchtime, I'll go around and replace all of the batteries on the receivers. Now let's test if this links and unlinks correctly. So I've currently got it unlinked, and I'm going to send a link command from the Exelux transmitter. And as you can see, that linked no problem at all. Now let's send an unlink command from the transmitter and see if it unlinks. No problem there at all. Now I've relinked it again. Let's see if it manually unlinks okay. And here's one of my issues with this device is that the reset button only has to be pressed momentarily like that for the device to unlink. So my concern is you could accidentally unlink this quite easily. And now let's see if it relinks okay. No problem at all. And now I'm not getting full signal strength, but I never seem to get full signal strength off the Exelux Control 1. Okay, let's do a bit of testing now. So this Sky panel has the Godox receiver, and this Sky panel here has an Exelux receiver. Let's see how we go. Now I'm doing the same test again, but I've swung everything around. So this light now has the Godox receiver, and this light now has an Exelux receiver. And the reason I'm doing this is in case anything you saw previously that you thought was the delay might actually just be the rolling shutter in the camera. So let's have a look. Okay, now let's start having a look at the transmitter. Okay, so before I do that, I'm going to unlink these from the previous transmitter. So this is the Exolux. Now watch this. To unlink it, I have to use a pencil and press on the button for 5 seconds. So there is absolutely no way you could accidentally unlink this on set. Whereas if you've got an assistant or yourself have got fat thumbs, you could just bump that button and now it's unlinked. So that'll definitely, I can see that being a problem on set and bite me in the ass. All right, now let's link the two. So to link, you press the set button and let's see if it links. So it's receiving the link commands and let's see what happens. Okay, no problem at all there. Now you'll see that the Godox is flashing and the Godox transmitter is flashing. So when it's flashing, it means it's not receiving 512 DMX. I've got nothing plugged in. Okay. Now on the Exolux receiver here, it's a little bit worn out because this is about probably 4 years old now, but there's a DMX signal light here that is not illuminated. So I can see from the two of these that I am not receiving 512 DMX. Okay, so let's plug in some 512 DMX and see what happens. All right, so as you can see, the status bar has lit up fully here and the signal status bar here is no longer flashing, it's fully illuminated. So that means it's receiving DMX and the DMX light has turned on the Exolux receiver. So we know we are sending a 512 signal. Now, one thing I do like with this Godox transmitter is, let's say you haven't got a 512 signal going into it yet and you want to test it. Well, there's a test button here. So if you flick that to on, it sends out a 512 signal. So you can identify if the problem is with your transmitter or with the signal going in or the cable going in. So I think that's a really big plus. All right, so Godox is obviously new to this because you can't do an unlink from the transmitter. So on most transmitters, if you hold the link button down for 5 seconds continuously, it will unlink the receivers. Okay, so that clearly hasn't happened. Now let's see what happens when I raise my finger. It now does a relink. Okay, so these two are linked together. Let's stick this on a sky panel and see if it's doing the correct stuff. Okay, let's go. This is definitely receiving 512 and it is doing the correct commands. No problem at all. All right, so I'm sending some DMX out from the workshop. So I've got this set up on a little stand. Let's keep it at this height because I've got some trees down the street there, which if I go any higher might interfere with the signal. Now I'm going to test the transmission range with the Exolux here because this has more signal strength receivers on it. Let's go for a walk and see how far we get. Now I'm at the first street corner and I'm still receiving full signal strength, so that's a good sign. Nobody's stolen the transmitter yet. So I'm now at the second street corner and I'm still receiving full signal strength. That is a crazy long way away. Okay, so I'm now at the end of my street and I'm starting to get a bit of signal loss. So line of sight, I still get full reception, but if I go below the crest on the hill here, you can see the signal strength drops. Right, so if I place my body between the receiver and the transmitter, you can see I've got no signal strength. So we're a fair distance away, and I think it's safe to assume that this is the end of the transmission range.